Hello and welcome back to Magic Theory 101. This is Chapter 5, the pushes and pulls of expansion. And today I actually have my friend as a guest speaker on the podcast. Wendy, say hi.
Hi, Zoe. Thanks for having me on your podcast. It's an honor to be here.
I'm glad you're here. So, last chapter, if you remember, we were going over basic magic, and this chapter I really want to talk about the purpose of desire in reality. So, desire exists in reality for a reason. Desire is a little tug in the direction of expansion. So, of course, living in reality, you are guided by expansion toward your constant direction of growth. So, this is how I like to put it. In front of you, there is always a light, and behind you, there is always a wall. Both of these move in the same direction simultaneously. So if you keep following the light, the wall will never hit your back. But if you come to a standstill, that is when the wall starts to pressure you. It eventually brings collapse and destruction if you keep standing still. You might hinder your own growth out of fear. Fortunately, in existence we can never not grow, so if you stagnate for too long, you will begin to feel things like pain, discomfort, and anger with your circumstances. That is the push of expansion, the wall. However, expansion is also always guided. There will also always be some type of desire, hope, or inspiration ahead of you, which, if you follow the call of, you will be led toward expansion. So it is your choice whether to follow your desires or be pushed by discomforts. So in previous chapters, we've covered that existence is according to our beliefs. However, the purpose of existence is to expand, and so all existence will be for expansion and evolve in expansion's direction. So, to properly figure out which direction you want to grow, you should look at your desires. A lot of the time, what you think are your desires will actually be covering up deeper desires. For example, you might tell yourself you want money when what you really want is stability or travel, or that you want romance when your real desire is to be taken care of. You need to understand that by outlining a desire and the way it will come to you so concretely, you might actually be hindering its ability to come to you. So, for example, if you say you want money, just let money come to you in all forms. Don't be so specific and say, I want to win the lottery. If your specificity comes from your own inspiration, that's great, but don't let it be because you're trying to figure out how a desire will get to you. You also don't have to have it all figured out. Sometimes you just follow a sudden pull. So I will always encourage people to follow their sudden inspirations and seemingly random desires. You may not be able to see what's ahead, but you can usually feel it. So, for example, let's say you had a sudden desire for strawberry ice cream. You don't know why because you don't normally eat ice cream. So you decide to follow the desire. When you get there, the ice cream shop is closed and your cravings have faded. It's a hot day, so you decide to instead go on a bike ride along the coast. And during this bike ride, you meet someone. The two of you start talking, and it turns out you guys have a lot in common, and this person actually is your future business partner. So you could never have pictured your day unfolding so randomly, which kind of is the way of life. But if you had never followed your craving for strawberry ice cream, you wouldn't have run into this person outside. So a desire is a tug, but it is not necessarily the end point. When you are drawn in a certain direction, go explore that. Follow that pull. Don't focus too much on what you'll find because you probably can't envision it right now. So, a desire is a motivation. It's a faint glow of the path ahead. There are beliefs society will drill into you that you might blindly follow. For example, they might tell you that you should desire money, but really try and consider what you want for yourself, even if you can't explain it, because that is your guiding light. Fear opposes desire and curiosity. Think of emotion as a belief's structural integrity. Sometimes beliefs are held together by love or anger or fear. So really, we can't blame fear. Fear is simply an old belief trying to keep itself together. Fear is that belief's structural integrity. If beliefs weren't secured by emotion, beliefs would be loose and really easily changeable in our reality. So we'll go into the purpose of emotion and reality more in next chapter, but for now, I really want to invite our guest speaker, Wendy, to come on here and say what she thinks.
Hey Zoe, first of all, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. And I find this chapter extremely interesting and insightful, actually. Particularly the part about desire. So, I want to talk about how you mentioned that when we think what we desire is just a surface level expression of something deeper, something that we might not even have realized yet. So, for example, we might say we desire wealth, but actually we really desire freedom, stability, adventure, something deeper.
Yeah.
And I want to know, so you also had mentioned that we should follow our passion because that could lead us to exploring ourselves. And it could lead us to new opportunities. So I want to know if there's a difference between an inclination of the heart as opposed to a passion that might be toxic or harmful to us. And how can we distinguish between which passions that we should follow and which ones we should be wary of that could lead us down a regretful path?
So I feel like this is all about recognizing your ego. So when you are trying to follow a desire, is the end feeling gonna be like, oh, I impressed my friends, I impressed society, I really made it, like they said I wouldn't make it, and now I made it? Are you just trying to prove a point to someone, or does the desire really inspire you? Like, does it really make you feel like you're living your dreams, or are you just doing it because society says that it's something that would be really impressive if you had done it?
Okay.
And yeah, I think you just really need to get used to recognizing when something comes from the ego and society versus when something really comes from your own true desire. And that can be hard for a lot of people when they're first starting out, but as you go on, you'll find that it actually gets easier to recognize which voice is the voice of your inner self or the universe or expansion or whatever you want to call it, and what voice is actually just something maybe your parents imprinted into you, or a different source that might not really align with your values. They told you that.
Do you think it gets more and more difficult as we age to kind of distinguish between the two desires? Because I think we really lose track of what we truly want as we, I guess, like enter society, um, take paths that don't really align with our core values, and then we kind of drift farther and farther away from that.
I think that so many beliefs are habitual, but I really don't think age affects your ability to follow your desire. I do think that there might be more circumstantial evidence that says you have to stay somewhere. For example, you might feel even more pressure to follow money when you have 2 kids. But I really don't think that we ever can drift away from our core values. I feel like we just shut our eyes to it and we stand still. But like in the example I mentioned earlier, so in front of you there's always a light, and behind you there's always a wall, and both of those are constantly moving. But if you've really stood still for so long, that just means the wall has been pressing into you longer because it's trying to push you to go forward. And so the wall might come in a few different forms of pain or anger or frustration. And really just standing still and trying to fit yourself into that mold might just mean it's been pushing hard and it's been pushing for a long time. But I don't think that we ever lose track of the light. Maybe we just choose to close our eyes and not see it.
That's pretty insightful, and I really feel like I think it's true. I think a lot of us, we just kind of bury it and find it inconvenient to face these desires because it just doesn't fit into our lives as of right now. But thank you for sharing about that. So you also mentioned about how fear, letting go of fear of being nothing. So let's talk a little bit about the fear of losing one's sense of self or existing without a clear belief structure.
Yeah.
How does this fear prevent somebody from evolving? And how can we let go of that old identity or belief to make room for new growth?
So I think here we really need to focus on remembering that all of us came from nothing. All existence is based off of nothing. And we came from nothing and we chose our beliefs. And that creates the new reality we're living in right now. But we need to remember that eventually we will go back to nothing because we came from nothing. And so nothing isn't necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes people are afraid to change their beliefs because they're afraid they'll lose their sense of self. But really, what is a sense of self? Like, aren't you much better off exploring all of these possibilities so that you might step into a version of yourself that you really love and that is really inspired all the time, instead of just staying still because of a maybe? Like, you need to really ask yourself, at the end of this life, if you continue on like this, will you be satisfied?
I think a lot of us hold on to the sense of self we've created over the years because we fear the unknown.
Yeah.
And we fear stepping out of that comfort zone, right? So I think that's why it's difficult for us to let go of that. How would you suggest people like go about stepping out of that comfort zone? Any like practical ways?
I feel like you could just start by doing research on things you might be interested in. For example, if you're interested in pottery or history, you might just do a Google search on that, because we really need to remember how small our our worldview actually is. So I like to tell people to always think of themselves as a kid. And as a kid, you barely know anything, right? I feel like as we grow, we sort of start to develop that ego where as we gain more and more knowledge, we think, oh, I have a picture of the world. This is the world. But in reality, there's always going to be such an immense part of the world that you don't see. And so you really need to just release that and start treating yourself like a kid again. Like, I barely know anything, so let me go explore this, let me go explore that. And in exploration, you'll find inspiration.
Yeah, I really like that suggestion. It's really just to remove yourself from your ego and realizing, oh, I am just this insignificant little thing. Like nobody cares, and that's a good thing, you know? Like no one's looking at you, no one cares. You should really use this opportunity to go out there and do whatever you want. And you only really have this life to live, right? So why not? Okay. Yeah, thank you for that. So you did touch on the you touched on how desire is the driver for expansion. So going back to the desires. How can we maintain like curiosity after leaving childhood? Because you know, a lot of adults, we get into like that daily grind and we kind of lose touch on being curious about the world. And there's so much, like you just mentioned, there's so much that we don't know, but we just don't bother like looking into it because we feel like it's not even relevant, right?
Yeah.
And how can we maintain that curiosity of a child, leaving childhood behind to continue our personal expansion?
I think it's really about being attentive because this world is so interesting that I can't really imagine anyone who's paying attention to it. They look around at the world and they don't see anything interesting. I think the thing about kids is that they're not staring at a phone screen all day, hopefully. And they're not constantly stressing about work. They're not constantly stressing about their relationships. It's like they're free to observe the world because they haven't let all of these thoughts and constructs take over their mind and take over their daily lives yet. So, what I would say is really just try, even just take 5 minutes to pay attention to the world around you every day. Like when you're going out for a walk, just look around and you'll probably see a sign, you'll probably see some plant or a bird, you'll see something you're interested in. You might meet someone that looks interesting. Just pay attention because there's always so much to explore in this world.
Would you say that people don't do that because they're too focused on themselves? Like we're just too focused on ourselves to really look outward, and we're constantly focused on things that don't even matter.
I would say sometimes people avoid looking outward because they're afraid of what they'll find. And deep down, they know they're not satisfied. But if they really face the fact that they're not satisfied, then they'll have to actually do something about it. And that's scary. So I think most people look away from that out of fear sometimes.
Yeah, I really agree. And I can actually relate to that as well. It's always scary to step out of your comfort zone and to walk into the unknown. Yeah, thank you for sharing. And so, like, let's tie this into like the creative process. How can somebody cultivate a mindset that sees nothingness not as a void? Because you did mention that we come from nothing and we will be nothing when we're dead, right? So, how can we see nothingness not as a void, but as a space of infinite potential?
So I don't really remember if I put this into previous episodes on the podcast, but I like to describe it as a an existent thing is a finished painting, and so nothing would be the blank canvas, right? So, in being a finished painting, that means that painting is unable to be the infinite other paintings it possibly could have been. But in being the blank canvas, it can be infinite paintings, it can be any painting. And that's really what I mean by nothingness being the potential for everything. So I wouldn't really say that nothingness is better than existence or that existence is better than nothingness. I think both of them exist for a balance, and both of them, I mean, nothingness is. I'm sorry, I lost track of my train of thought.
Okay. Just edit it out.
I will just edit that part out.
Sure. That's fine.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you wouldn't say that nothingness is better than existence.
Mm-hmm.
Or that existence is better than nothingness.
Yeah, I think both of them are really necessary for this exploration.
Mm-hmm. They all play their part, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's like the theory of relativity. You have nothing, and then you have something, and then they all kind of coexist together in a very beautiful way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I don't think I have any more questions, and this was actually so insightful for me to think about, because I actually had been going through something recently that kind of, this was kind of like a reminder, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so it just came at the right time. Yeah. Thank you.
That's perfect. I'm glad to hear that. So I actually kind of want to share one of my own examples of following a random desire. So actually at the beginning of this year, I just had this sudden desire that I really wanted to join the circus. And so I signed up for some trapeze classes, and I started meeting a bunch of people who were like fire performers and all that cool stuff. And I actually started talking to a bunch of people and telling them I kind of wanted to travel and be in a traveling circus troupe, which is, it sounds kind of unhinged, but, you know, I just feel like sometimes when you really have a strong desire, you kind of have to let go of former systems of logic in order to move forward. That's how I explain it. Anyways, so as you can probably expect, I did not end up joining a traveling circus troupe, but I met so many cool people, and I still do stuff like aerial and acro yoga, and it just really encouraged me to travel and work. And yes, I did do a bunch of traveling while working, except instead of doing circus arts, I was doing my witch stuff. I was teaching classes, I was setting up booths for divination and stuff. So I feel like, yeah, that was a really good exercise in following my desire, because like I said, desire is the pull in a certain direction, but it's not always the end point.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for sharing. And yeah, I think it's kind of like the butterfly effect, or like the chain effect, where you just need that initial push. And that initial push is the push of multiple dominoes, right?
Yeah.
And it just keeps going. And that's kind of like the beauty of life. It's you don't even know where you might end up. And that's what makes like this whole topic, you know, infinitely possibly beautiful. Okay. Anything else you'd like to share?
I would actually like to ask you if you've had any personal experiences of like following a desire and having it lead to something that you didn't expect it to lead to?
Yeah, I don't know if I should answer this question because all of my desires have led me to kind of sticky situations.
Really?
Yes, I feel like I'm the type of person who I kind of need like that blueprint and follow like really clear set paths. If I followed my desires, I'd find myself probably not in a good place. But I have taken the initiative to step out of my comfort zone. And so, for example, like we both belong in the same book club, and meeting people for me is kind of difficult sometimes. I really need to like force myself. And yeah, the first time I went to the first book club meeting, I just basically showed up and I followed the directions online. It was like, okay, this time, this place, hello. And I was just like, that for me was kind of like stepping out of my comfort zone. Something that I probably wouldn't do because I like familiarity, and I think most people do. As for following desires, yeah, my desires are usually not good, so we'll not go there.
So, well, you followed that little tug to go to book club, and then exactly. I joined book club, and then you met me, and now we're here.
Exactly.
But I want to say, like, do you think that maybe you associate following your own desires with some sort of guilt, or maybe you have issues with maybe you have a belief like the world isn't that trustworthy or something like that?
Yeah, I think yeah, okay, that could be a reason. The guilt part would just depend on what type of desires I'm following. Usually they could be harmful. They could be a little bit not appropriate. But I think I just try to encapsulate that. And that led me to the question that I had asked earlier, like, how do you know which desires to follow? Because I'm sure not all desires should be followed. Like, what if I just wanted to go out there today and get really, I don't know, drunk? That's a desire too, right?
I guess it is,
and a lot of people repress their emotions. They have just desires that probably shouldn't
be fulfilled. Yeah, I think for me personally, I don't really experience that because I'm usually really in the habit of being very emotionally open and following my desires. But I feel like the thing with energies and emotions is when you pent them up and you don't let them out, then when they do finally come out, it's gonna come out like in a whole burst. So I do feel like, yeah, emotions need regulating. They need that regular release so that it doesn't come out in a really messy way, right? Yeah, like if you've been repressing your anger, you might have had the opportunity to like go exercise twice a week, every week, and get that anger out. But if you didn't do that and you just have like 6 months of anger piled up, you might actually release that anger in a really explosive way and maybe ruin a relationship. So I do think that's also part of it. It's just finding that energetic balance and not repressing yourself.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. And I think maybe because you're still young, you don't need to worry about that kind of thing. Like, you're just very open. And that's also why I like chatting with you, because you're just so open. But with people who are not naturally open like that, I think we do tend to just, like, not everything is appropriate to say. And not everything should be said. You're gonna offend people. Or, yeah, so depending on the audience listening, like, I really feel like it's coming from two different perspectives, because you're half my age, and I've gone through like double your life, so but it's really cool how we get to see like the contrast between two different perspectives.
I would say like I don't really call personality traits like natural, because that kind of makes it sound like something we cannot change since birth. But in reality, a few years ago, I actually had really bad social anxiety. And the way I got myself out of it was just by forcing myself to break those habits, to change those beliefs. And now I'm a really open person. Like, I'm extroverted, I talk to people, and it feels natural for me. But by natural, all I really mean is habit. Like, so much of our existence is just habit.
I really, really love that. And you know why? Because it really brings hope to people who are not naturally extroverted. And you're right, because I find myself, if I've gone out for a couple days, I've talked to people, I feel just like in a different mind zone. And maybe that's all it takes. It just takes constantly doing something and rewiring your brain. And so I think this really brings hope to a lot of people, people who are not naturally extroverted, or even just people who want to do certain things but are afraid. If you just keep trying and trying and trying over again, you'll eventually get there.
Yeah, because actually a while ago I was sick for about 2 weeks, and during that time period I didn't really see anyone. And then I stepped back onto the social scene, and like someone comes over and starts talking to me, and like I just get this sudden anxiety in my chest, and I'm like, wow, what is this? I have not felt this in years. And so I really do think it's all about your regular habits. Like, what you do most often is probably going to be your comfort zone. And so if you do it enough, like, the thing that you do on a daily basis is probably going to become your comfort zone, as opposed to the things you don't do. Because all throughout my childhood, actually, when I was growing up, I was a really introverted person. I didn't really talk. I didn't really have that many friends. And now I'm just kind of like the complete opposite of that. And it's because of my daily habit.
I think I have a lot to take away from this. I think this has inspired me in many ways to step out of my own comfort zone and to basically rewire my brain and give myself a new opportunity, kind of like what do you call it, a butterfly coming out of a cocoon.
Like a butterfly coming out of a chrysalis, or
yeah, exactly. Is that what it is?
Yeah, I feel like
metamorphosis. Yes. Okay. Yeah, thank you. I feel really positive right now about this.
Amazing. Okay. Yeah. Okay, is there anything else you want to say?
There's nothing else I want to say other than thank you so much for inspiring me, and I truly am inspired.
Okay, thank you, Wendy, for coming on the podcast today. This has been Chapter 5 of Magic Theory 101. I'm your host, Zoe Morana. I love you, Wendy. I love you all, and I'll see you next time.